Hi everyone, I'm Maria McLachlan and this is part 2 of my response to Rebecca Watson's appalling video entitled What the Science Says About Teens on Puberty Blockers. In the first part, I drew attention to the falsehoods she put out about surgery in teens, about which she said this.
So we can dismiss that as something that doesn't really happen.
And I showed that this is wrong. Now we are going to hear her mislead her viewers about puberty blockers. And we start with her talking about Texas Governor Greg Abbott's directive, which was to investigate families who are transing their kids for child abuse.
Abbott also mentions puberty blockers, though, and that does tend to be prescribed for teenagers under the age of 18, still under the care of their parents. So what are those, and why do people like Greg Abbott think that they're abusive to give to teenagers? Puberty blockers do essentially what it says on the tin. They press the pause button on the flood of hormones that we get when we enter puberty. They are completely reversible.
Really? It's interesting that in 2020, the NHS amended the information about puberty blockers on its website, which once said they were considered fully reversible, but no longer does say that. There must be a reason they did that. It now says it is not known what the psychological effects may be. It is also not known whether hormone blockers affect the development of the teenage brain. You cannot, in all honesty, say that the blockers are fully reversible if their long-term effects are still unknown.
In that once you decide that you want to start puberty, you simply stop taking the puberty blockers and boom, your body knows what to do, your hormones leap into action.
It's not exactly boom, according to what I've read. It's a gradual process that can take a year before puberty starts.
Most puberty blockers are gonadotropin-releasing hormone, GnRH.
No. Gonadotropin-releasing hormone stimulates the pituitary gland to secrete the hormones responsible for the development of the gonads. That's obviously an oversimplification. But puberty blockers are GnRH analogues, otherwise known as GnRH blockers or inhibitors. They are a synthetic form of GnRH and, again, oversimplifying hugely, they cause a suppression of the secretion of the hormones needed for pubertal development. Rebecca goes on to say that they have a variety of uses, but the ones that are relevant here are, firstly, in delaying puberty in children who start what is called central precocious puberty, which is defined as starting before the age of 8 in girls and before age 9 in boys. It's a rare condition, extremely rare in boys, and they are approved by the FDA for that purpose. And they are also used for physically healthy adolescents who start puberty within the normal age range but who are diagnosed as suffering from what is called gender dysphoria. Rebecca doesn't mention that this particular use is off-label. They are not licensed for treating dysphoric adolescents anywhere in the world. Nor does she make the point, maybe because it's so obvious, or maybe because it doesn't fit what I suspect is her personal agenda of wanting to be on what she is daft enough to think will be the right side of history. That point being that when used to delay puberty in young children, in precocious puberty, they are being used to treat an abnormal condition. When used by physiologically normal but mentally and emotionally distressed adolescents, their purpose is to pause their normal, healthy physical development. And that should surely give us all pause for thought. As we shall see, Rebecca does not distinguish between the two uses, which beggars belief because it's a crucial distinction, and that's another failure of her skepticism.
After reading far more research on this than honestly I would like, it appears to me that the medical consensus is that none of that is true. Puberty blockers do not cause loss of bone density or sterility. A systematic review of the literature by authors designated by multiple pediatric endocrinology societies from around the globe.
Firstly, note how Rebecca has given the impression of being extremely diligent and conscientious in her research. Secondly, the description of the paper she quotes from as a systematic review of the literature could be a bit misleading. Usually, a research paper will state in the title what it is. As we can see, this paper that Rebecca sources is actually an update by a consortium of guidelines on the usage of puberty blockers primarily for children with precocious puberty. What the consortium sets out to do was look at how usage has changed over the previous 10 years. And in the abstract, we learn that there have been many changes in the usage of the puberty blockers, but there is a paucity of evidence to support those changes. Therefore, this paper is not intended to evaluate what is recommended in terms of the best use of GnRH analogues based on evidence and expert opinion, but rather to describe how these drugs are used irrespective of any qualitative evaluation. You would not know this from how Rebecca speaks of the paper and how she describes puberty blockers as if they are the last word in safety and efficacy. As I said, the bulk of the paper deals with usage in precocious puberty. There is one very short section entitled Use of GnRH analogues in the Management of Transgender Adolescents, which is literally 2 paragraphs. And there is one longer section at the end that deals with all the other conditions. Now, see how she quotes from the paper.
There is no substantiated evidence that GnRHA treatment impairs reproductive function or reduces fertility.
You missed something out there, Rebecca. CPP. See it? That is central precocious puberty. There is no good evidence that the treatment reduces fertility in girls who've been treated for the abnormal condition of very early puberty and who, when they approach the normal age of puberty, they've been allowed to go through it as a normal adolescent. This whole paragraph talks exclusively about kids with precocious puberty, and Rebecca leaves out that crucial piece of information even in the one sentence she quotes from. Now, that paragraph is from section 6 of the paper, which is about a page and a half on long-term outcomes on treating children with precocious puberty with puberty blockers. Not about treating adolescents with gender dysphoria. If Rebecca had scrolled down a bit, she would have found the whole new but extremely short section 7 devoted to trans-identifying adolescents, in which we read that the puberty blockers prevent maturation of primary oocytes and spermatogonia and may preclude gamete maturation, and currently, there are no proven methods to preserve fertility in early pubertal transgender adolescents. Here's a headline from a UK newspaper in 2016. I don't know how young an age they are getting them in the US. Rebecca seems to think a doctor will prescribe them to 10 or 11 years old, and seeing how young they are prepared to mutilate kids' bodies in spite of the medical guidelines wouldn't surprise me. So, on to bone density, which is a subject close to my heart, if not my bones, but then my bones are old. One of the systematic reviews cited by the consortium's paper was this. This is what a systematic review paper normally looks like, clearly stating in the title what it is. We learned that after searching a number of data banks and looking at papers over a 70-year period, only 13 studies met the inclusion criteria, and these were all observational studies, and not just studies on the puberty blockers, but also on the other treatments, the wrong sex hormones, etc. as well. So they concluded, low quality evidence suggests that hormonal treatments for transgender adolescents can achieve their intended physical effects, but evidence regarding their psychosocial and cognitive impact are generally lacking. Further research to address these knowledge gaps and improve understanding of the long-term effects of these treatments is required. Now, watch this.
And in regards to bone density, while GnRHA treatment slows mineral accrual, after discontinuation, BMD appears not to be significantly different from that of their peers by late adolescence.
Again, this is quoting from a paragraph that is specifically about children with precocious puberty. 3 papers are referenced in this paragraph. All 3 are studies of children with CPP. Again, in the section that is about dysphoria in adolescence, we read that the changes brought about by these puberty blockers include a decrease in height standard deviation score and bone mineral density. The impact on BMD is concerning since lumbar spine Z-scores at age 22 years were found to be lower than those observed prior to treatment, suggesting a possible permanent decrement in BMD. Thus, it is unclear how long GnRH analogues can safely be administered. So what Rebecca Watson has done, after claiming to have read far more research than she would have liked, is give out false information. Shameful. A word from endocrinologist Michael Laidlaw.
What you'd expect during adolescent development is bones get stronger and stronger and tougher, what we call more dense. They're going to elongate, they're going to become stronger. And so that's a very rapid progression because of sex hormones and growth hormone to some degree. And what they showed was that where you'd expect it to rise, it just flatlined. But to me, the way it's written was deceptive, like, oh, well, the bone density didn't change. And I'm looking at this saying, well, it's supposed to change now. It's supposed to get stronger. It's supposed to get stronger and bigger, but you're showing that it's flatlined, which is exactly what you would expect if someone wasn't going through puberty.
Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, thank you if you've stuck with me this far. I've actually found making these 2 videos in response to Rebecca Watson's nonsense more upsetting than I thought I would, so I've decided to stop here. I think I've said enough for the time being to show that Rebecca is misleading people. The other claim she makes that I'm not going to examine now is that puberty blockers are necessary to save lives. That is definitely a claim that one should be sceptical of, and as we've seen, Rebecca has lost any ability she may once have had to be sceptical. Like so many erstwhile skeptics, she's too subservient to the cult to think clearly and rationally, and she has said demonstrably false things about the evidence she herself provides for the other claims she makes. My God, she even said this.
You take the puberty blockers, let's say, for a few years, and at 16 you decide, you know what? Yes, you would like to transition to the opposite sex.
Opposite sex? Not even gender, sex. She is actually saying you can change sex. Okay, I've had enough of her. Thanks for watching. Bye.